Welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show, where we highlight hands-on entrepreneurs, thinkers, and leaders who reshape how we see work, culture, and community. My guest today is Dr. Julie Pham, a Vietnamese-born American, raised refugee, Cambridge-trained social scientist, bestseller author of Seven Forms of Respect, and the CEO of CuriosityBased. She's on a mission to help people rethink how we talk about respect, curiosity, and inclusion. Julie, it's an honor to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for reaching out and inviting me.
Thank you. So, Julie, what was it like growing up for you?
Oh gosh, growing up. So I had to tell you first that I grew up bicultural. I was born in Vietnam and I fled communist Vietnam with my parents when I was a 2-month-old baby. And my parents founded the first private Vietnamese newspaper in the Pacific Northwest. So growing up meant running. My parents were hustlers among hustlers and they worked all the time. And we were in a small family business serving also other small, often family Vietnamese owned businesses. Got to watch my parents and learn from my parents directly and work, their office was my playroom. So
Wow, amazing. So, what were those couples of jobs that you did that shaped your work ethic before you actually created the companies you now own?
well, I would definitely say that the work experience of my watching my parents was just that first. I mean, my first job I feel was just helping them with the newspaper. Back then, this is before we had desktop publishing, and it was just there was a lot of cut and paste. But my parents never wanted me to work at the newspaper, and so I thought I was actually going to be an academic, and so I guess my that really shaped also my early work experience was just thinking I was going to be a researcher and a storyteller. And actually what ended up happening in 2008, which is when I finished my dissertation, I came back to Seattle and 2008 was the start of the worldwide recession and
Yeah.
also the global decline of the newspaper industry. And so then I started working at the newspaper full time and I got my real life MBA by working at the newspaper. And that was the best education I ever got, was working in the newspaper alongside my family, serving our small businesses, customers, and we were all struggling. And that was the best education. I think I carry that to this day, even now as our economy is facing a lot of challenges and our political climate's facing it's just a lot of instability. And I think about that time and how I got through that time by seeing constraints as fostering curiosity and also creativity, and that's shaped all my later work.
Wow, this is really, really amazing and inspiring, I would say. So, what inspired you to now create your company?
What inspired me to start my own company was at first I was working in a nonprofit that I loved working at, so I had the best job and I was there for 6 years, and the only reason I would leave a job that I love was actually because I felt called to start my own company. And I don't say I say I felt called. It wasn't that I had a passion. Think I have many passions. I felt called to do that and to leave this job because I knew that the only way that I could own my own work is if I started my own company. Because the thing is, as long as I'm an employee, someone else owns my work.
Mm.
And I remember, and I started my company in 2021, and I started it. It was just when it was the when we were really clearly in lockdown, right? The whole world pandemic lockdown. And I told my father I was going to leave my stable job as a nonprofit executive to start my own company. And I was worried about what he was going to say because as refugees, we really value stability.
Yeah.
I was always taught stability, get a job, get a paycheck. And he said, I'm so happy for you because now I'm so happy for you because, I worked in the tech industry and I lost jobs. I was laid off. And he said, when you got laid off, I cried. And now you never have to worry about losing your job again because I make my own work and you have freedom. And so that was in 2021. I willingly chose. And it was because I really felt that there was no alternative. If I'm going to own my work, I had to start my own company. And that was a risk that I was willing to take. And that was because I saw my parents take that risk too.
Wow, it was really, really amazing. I think it's the fact that you spoke to your dad about it and he gave you the biggest confirmation anyone could give you. Also, you're living more like a stable path towards leadership is most times unknown, and the fact that there are a whole lot of things, but the fact that you own your work, you own everything. At the end of the day, no one is just going to put you out one day and say, it's time to go. So it's
Yeah.
really amazing hearing that feedback and that confirmation, and it's really pretty.
I have some friends who were saying, "Oh, I need to get a stable job." And I said, "The only stable job is the one you create for yourself." I also want to say entrepreneurship is not cut out for everyone. I think
Yeah.
because I grew up with it, I have a much higher risk tolerance. And I saw my parents go through these big waves, good times, bad times, good times, bad times. And so I knew that it was not going to be easy. But I also saw my parents control their own schedule, make their own decisions. And so whenever I talk to other entrepreneurs, I ask, did you grow up in an entrepreneurial family? Because I think that it's a to get exposed to that does give us a different kind of
Yeah.
more courage.
Yeah. I think what you just speak volume, and I think that is the reason why most times when I dive into the stories of or stories that I actually recorded on this podcast, I actually ask what was the background more like? What was it like growing up? Owing to have discovered over time that entrepreneurs most times are those who have seen it first, either through their parents, through their loved ones, or through the first more like where they go to work at first. The owing to the company was just starting out, and they were able to learn a whole lot of things owing to it starting out. Because even me too, I think I see my parents more like growing up, doing a whole lot of different things, not relying on paycheck at any time. It was really amazing. And that was actually more like when it comes to risk tolerance, it has actually increased to a whole way that I'm not looking forward to being employed. And I'm not looking forward to it. And the fact that entrepreneurs just give you the fact that sometimes there might be a big paycheck, while sometimes there might be a low paycheck. But the fact that you could actually make this on your own and just do things the way you want,
Hmm.
that's for me. It's really, really amazing. And you can actually manage your time and yeah, do what you want to do part time. Which I know is not
Hmm.
cost for everybody, being that the experience and yeah, not everybody have that particular experience and they might not be able to bear the cushion that actually comes with when there's a low down moment compared to when there's actually more like higher moment.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So thank you. So how did you develop a seven form of respect framework? What led you to
Hmm.
exploit respect in a very unique way?
Yes, yes. So I would say that there are three experiences that led to this book. So
Okay.
first is growing up bicultural, growing up Vietnamese at home, American at school and at work. And then I lived in the UK, Germany, France, and Vietnam as an adult, and seeing that in different places we have different expectations around how to treat each other. And so that is a one. And then the second one is my community engagement work, community organizing work. So when I came back to Seattle to help run the newspaper, I got pulled into doing a lot of community service because when you run a small newspaper, you do work in the community. And I saw that there were people who were coming from really different backgrounds, and we just had different expectations around how we wanted to be treated. And there wasn't a language for that. And so instead, people just got really friction emerged and people just got really upset. I don't like this. But we didn't have a language to describe it. It was more of just, I need you to respect me, but I do respect you. And then the last part that led to this was actually in research, because when I first started my work on the book, my first question was, how do you want to be treated? And people kept saying that using the word respect. And that's when I had asked, well, what does respect mean to you? And that's when I realized people meant different things by respect.
Wow, wow,
And that's
amazing.
where it's just, okay, let's get into that. Let's see what that means. And Aro, another thing that's really important to me is using plain language. Using plain language. And so even though I'm trained as an academic, we use lots of fancy words. For me, actually being able to speak plainly is so much harder. And I learned that because working with my parents in a Vietnamese newspaper, I mean, even I actually didn't learn Vietnamese until I was an adult, until I went to grad school. And so learning how to use words it's not that they're simple, but it's plain. And then to really go deep into those words, because the word respect, the word curiosity, we have different ideas of what that means. So let's talk about it. And so at the heart of the 7 forms of respect framework, it's actually how do we get curious about respect? I think a lot of people think it's about rules, like do this, don't do this. It's not about rules. It's actually about taking the time to say, what are your forms of respect? These are my forms. And that means we assume that we have different ways of showing respect, but we want to respect each other. I want to know what matters to you.
Wow, amazing, amazing. So how do you define respect differently from the traditional
Yes,
golden
yes.
rules
And so
ideas we grew up with.
yeah. So we actually have, so the 7 forms, we have this acronym called PICA, PPICCAA, and it stands for punctuality, procedure, information, candor, consideration, acknowledgement, and attention. And so it's not about getting all 7. It's about understanding which are the ones that matter to me. Which are the ones that I really care about. And I care about it so much, even if other people, I care about it, I'll do it even if it doesn't matter to other people. So for example, maybe like for me, time is really important. Punctuality is really important. And even with friends who are going to be late, I still tell them, hey, I try to show up on time, even if I know that they are always running late, right? Because it's actually not about them. It's about me. And it's about what matters to me. And then the second part of that is to understand why do we care about what we care about? What are those experiences in our life, the people in our life who inform that? And a lot of that can be culture. A lot of that can be, but culture means many things. It's not just where we grew up. It could also be even our generation. I'm a Generation Xer. We have many different identities. I'm also an oldest child. Aro, what is your birth order? How many siblings do you have?
I have 4 siblings.
And are you the oldest, middle, or youngest?
Let's say the middle.
Right. And so there's just, right, there's differences between probably your oldest and your youngest in terms of respect. So, but the respect can be defined in these different forms. And I really try to tell people it's not right or wrong. It's not about getting all 7. It's about really thinking about what matters to me and what's that based on. And then I actually think that there's a difference of what matters to us at work and at home.
Wow.
Right. And so it helps actually people understand that respect it's relative, it's dynamic, it's contradictory, and all of those things are okay. It's okay that we're not perfect. That's what I really want people to understand. It's okay. It's not a rule that always has to be followed.
Oh, this is really amazing. I think it's the fact that from what you just make reference of, going to different culture and going to different places, how people actually perceive our respect is different.
Mhm.
Us is normal of just knowing this, the 7 pickup, but just to actually be curious enough to ask what does the respect actually means to individual, getting to know that and tailor what they perceive as respect to them, so that in a way you get to connect with them better and do things compared to you just assuming this should be the standard way, not knowing that culture make it different and people are actually more like come from different area and they are different. So how can curiosity help team navigate conflict more effectively?
The way that curiosity can navigate conflict is when we are feeling tension, when we're feeling that conflict, is instead of feeling I need to win, because that's usually how people think about conflict, is someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. It's what am I going to learn? That's a shift.
Yeah.
Because if I think of how I'm going to learn, then I always win, even if what I ended up thinking was not what was chosen. There are definitely times where I have felt, do not agree with this person. And here's the other thing. We have to get curious about ourselves too. A lot of times when people talk about curiosity, we talk about learning other things. And I also think of it as like learning ourselves. And I'll just quickly say, when I talk about respect, I have to get curious about myself and what matters to me. I have to ask myself. And so in terms of this, for curiosity and conflict, is anytime we're about to enter a tough conversation, I ask people to ask themselves 2 questions. The first question is, do I want this person to learn from me? Yeah, I want them to learn from me. And the second question is, am I willing to learn from them? Am I willing to learn from them? And I have to actually take some time to be honest with myself.
Wow.
Because being able to learn from them, I have to be open to changing my mind. And I got to tell you, there are times I'm like, I'm not ready. But I think a lot of times people want to be ready. They want to think of themselves as being bigger. Like, oh, I can do this. And we have to be honest with ourselves and say, like, I am feeling kind of defensive right now. I'm not ready to have this conversation with someone else because I cannot possibly think of any other reason why they did what they did. And so what I encourage people to do then is to go practice with someone else, talk it out. And I think that it's a difference between complaining and actually saying, help me see another perspective so I can be prepared to have this conversation. And so, how do you apply curiosity to conflict is instead of saying winning and losing, shift it to what can I learn?
Wow, amazing. I think this is really profound. And from you actually make reference of seeing it from the standpoint of curiosity. Even when it comes to conflicts, I think it just resolves the fact that now you're not proven to be right. You're just proven to understand and to see what you could actually learn. And I think there's a particular book of John Maxwell that speaks volumes to this, which say actually more like saying, I think the title of the book was Sometimes You Win and Sometimes You Learn. Instead of saying sometimes you lose, sometimes you learn. Because the sometimes you learn there is the fact that how you just make reference of it is you being curious about what is going on, be curious about yourself, be curious about the person, and instead of seeing it as being losing, you're actually seeing that, oh, I just learned this particular perspective, which I never knew before, compared to you actually seeing it from a game of win and lose, which at the end of the day, actually more like, yeah, you won't be curious and you won't learn any single thing after the end of the day. And they just speak volumes to how to see differently when it comes to that particular perspective. As
And
someone,
the thing is,
yeah,
I'll just say, because what is right and wrong can change.
yeah, so true.
It can change depending on the context, right? And so if we come from as like, okay, what am I going to learn in this time? We'll never go wrong. But like what I think is right now might change because of the world has changed.
Yeah,
Because the world maybe thinks like that's not a good thing anymore.
yeah,
And
so true.
and we got to adapt with it.
So true, so true. Yeah, thank you for that. So, as someone who has lived in multiple countries, how has your multicultural background now shaped your perspective on communication?
Oh, in so many ways, because I realized that I get to flex. So some people feel they have a burden, like, I have to change. And it's like, I feel like I get to because I can. I can go into different environments now and go, oh, okay, this is what this needs. So, for example, in the US, sometimes hierarchy is considered bad. But in Vietnamese, when I'm in Vietnam, I mean, even in the Vietnamese language, hierarchy is embedded in the language. I am only who I am in relationship to other people. So I'm constantly trying to see, are you older than me? Are you younger than me? Are you older than my parents? Are you younger than my parents? What is our positional power? And then I refer to myself and I refer to you with that. And so that's embedded in the very language. And it's not good or bad, it just is. And then, I mean, I remember living in Germany, and just the sense of order and precision and punctuality is really, really important. And yet in Vietnam, they have a saying, time is rubber. And I'll tell you actually a story of when I lived in Vietnam. When I first started living in Vietnam, people would cancel on me last minute all the time. I had Vietnamese acquaintances who would cancel last minute, and I couldn't understand why. And I was getting pretty frustrated. And then I asked a Vietnamese friend who lived in England, and he said, oh, it's because I said, don't they know? They must know a little earlier. Why do they cancel last minute? And he said, oh, they know. But the reason why they're canceling is because then it's an emergency. And if they tell you ahead of time, then that means it's a choice not to be with you. But if it's last minute, then it's an emergency. And so for me, there's no way I could come to that logic on my own. Right. And so that's the getting curious, right? Like, why is this happening? But sometimes we are in it, so we can't even explain it ourselves. We can't even explain because it was something we're so used to, right? Like, I mean, the first time I lived in the UK, I asked someone, how far is it to get from Cambridge to London? And they answered in distance. They told me how many kilometers it was. And that's when I realized, oh, in the US, we talk about time. Is it a 45-minute train ride? Is it an hour in traffic? You can tell me distance, which is, they answered my question literally, but it's not my question, right?
Yeah.
And so being in different cultures, I think, helps us understand all the assumptions that we have. And this isn't just about in different countries. This is also, I mean, Aro, I know a lot of your work is entrepreneurship and blue collar workers. And it's like even different kinds of industries in different sectors. You have different. I mean, one of the things that inspired my work actually was there was a team of volunteers, and one person was an engineer, another person was a union organizer. And the engineer kept asking these deep probing questions. And the union organizer said, why are you asking all these questions? I got this. Don't you trust me? I got this, And so they were having a challenge but the engineer, I mean, engineers always ask questions.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're trying to break things down. And whereas in union organizing, it can be a lot about the relationships.
Yeah. So true.
And so, so in any case, yes, living in different countries, different cultures, I think that makes it very clear. But I also think that at the end of the day, individuals have to choose what's important to them. So it's not,
Yeah.
we are influenced, but we still make a decision, because I've had friends who say, I grew up in a culture where they did this and I don't like to do that because I found it annoying, right? So I'm really careful to say, just because you grew up in a certain way or where you learn something doesn't mean that you always do that. Sometimes you actually react against it.
This is really, really amazing. I think it's the fact that you're able to find balance within the different culture. You being curious about what is obtainable in this particular culture and what is not obtainable. Especially when it comes to gambling and the various places you actually make reference of their sense of time, urgency. It's really amazing because you being curious just clear your doubt rather than be angry and seeing it from that perspective.
Right?
It
Like, why are
just
you
make it
late? I can't believe it. And for me, I was just, I mean, that means I'm always thinking my way is the right way.
yeah. Yeah.
And here's the
So
thing,
true.
I'm living in Vietnam as a guest, right? Like, it's not my, like, I'm an American in Vietnam and Vietnamese were doing this. And so that means I have to learn.
So true.
I can't expect people to adapt to me.
Yeah. So how does leaders balance being authentic whilst still honoring others' perspective and value?
You know, that's a really interesting question, because authentic, I think that we actually have many authentic selves and we get to share different aspects of ourselves. And so when I hear people say, bring your authentic self to work, I ask, well, which one? Right? And because honestly, sometimes I feel I'm more authentic at work than I am at home.
Yeah, that's so true.
Because at work, I get to be the boss, right? At home, I need to be the daughter. I need to be the girlfriend. I need to be the partner, the older sister, right? I'm
Yeah.
constantly thinking consideration. That's when 7 forms of respect, we have consideration. I prioritize consideration a lot more in my home life than in my work life. And so in a way, at work, I can be more authentic, right? But I also don't feel, oh, this is a burden. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, you did. You did.
Okay.
I think it's really, really speak volume because a whole lot of our entrepreneurs are battling between being authentic and you just make reference of it that there are a whole lot of different perspectives to it because how you be authentic to your child, to your children. In fact, it's always different with age compared to when they are but like within the age of 1 to 5 is different from how you act compared to when they're already in their teenage age. And so it's changed with time and owing to the particular environment you are. So I would like you to actually more like define these acronyms you make reference of earlier on, which is the 7 form of respect, which you make reference of speak up so that my audience could I think because
Yeah,
the
I
more
can
you
share each.
actually
Yeah.
more like make reference of it, the
Okay.
more it opens up to
Yeah.
more reality. So can you just piece it
Yes, I
one
can
after
definitely
the
do
other?
that. So first, PICA, PPICCAA. So there's punctuality, and that is around honoring time constraints. So that's not just about showing up on time. That's about also if our meeting is half an hour, we keep it within half an hour. And for some people, it's like, no, the conversation just needs to take as long as it needs to take. Right. And others are like, no, this is the time we've set aside for that. Then there is procedure, and that's more about the protocol, the rules, the roles, the specific. For example, it's just, hey, this is my job and that's your job. Look at our job descriptions. That's what it says. And we are going to do that. And procedure can be really important in big companies like the military, big organizations. But in, say, startups, it's not as important because it's just, we're just trying to figure things out. And then information. And this is about giving people access to information, to data, to knowledge. And it's kind of like for your information. I'm sharing this with you. You decide what to do with it. I'm giving you access to, I'll tell you these things, but you have to decide what to do with it. It could look like even I'm going to CC you on an email, even though you don't need to be on that email. And for some people, they think, I want to know everything. And other people think, only give me things I need to act on, right? And so that can be really annoying for some people. Then there's candor. And so candor is about giving information with the intention to change something. So that could be feedback, for example, or deep probing questions. And so for some people, that asking those deep probing questions can feel, oh, you're interested in me. And for other people, it's like you're challenging.
Yeah, so true.
And then consideration, this is the hardest of the 7 forms. Consideration is about acting on what you think the other person wants. You're not asking them, hey, what do you want? I want to surprise you. This is the thought that counts. And so the reason why this one is really hard is because for people who are receiving consideration, this is usually think about it in terms of like, I'm going to surprise you with something. If the surprise is something I like, then they're showing consideration. If it's something I don't like and they're wrong, then it's not consideration. But the thing is, consideration is, it's the thought that counts. Even if they got it wrong, they tried. And so that's where we have to, and sometimes people go, well, why didn't they bring that up? Because they thought, here's a work example. Someone comes back after being on parent leave, family leave, right? And they come back and maybe their boss thinks, oh, they're really stressed out. I'm not going to put them on this big project. So the boss is showing consideration, right? But maybe they're like, I just want you to ask me, can I be on it or not? But someone else might think if the boss asks, like, don't they realize I'm so stressed? Why are they asking me, right? And so this kind of, it gets at how each of these, it's really tricky. We can never, it's hard to be always right. And then acknowledgement is about praise. It's about gratitude. It can be even simple as, hey, you send me an email. I say like, hey, thanks, I got the email. And then attention. So for acknowledgement, some people like that and other people like, no, only give praise when it is exceptional, right? Because some people think, oh, you're great, you're awesome. It's like, that's so superficial.
Yeah,
like,
true.
don't just say that, right? But other people need that. They want that. And then the last one is attention. So attention is about not multitasking. It's about listening carefully. And this one can really depend on the workplace. Because for example, when I worked in tech, people multitask all the time. It's considered performance, right? And so some people are, attention is so important, but it's like, it can be really difficult to give. And for some people now we see, neurodivergency, or it's like ADHD and things, and people like attention, that kind of focused attention can be hard. So for different reasons, people might not be able to give it. And so all of this is to say there are reasons people like it or don't like it. And that's why we can't give this rule that's always do these three. It's more of, I think of it as, what are we going to prioritize because it affects the work? I know for example, in construction, because there's a lot of safety issues, right? So it's like, hey, procedure is important. You got to follow protocol because it matters. Injuries can happen. That's why we do it. And so it's also important for people to understand why we do what we do.
Yeah, why we do.
Because otherwise employees think like, oh, you're just telling me, you're just like giving me rules, but I need to understand why it matters. And I'll just say one other thing here is, I've been just saying that respect is dynamic, and that's because of these, I call them three different dimensions. And the first is power dynamics. It's hierarchy. And so, I know a lot of your audience, they're entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. You know where there's power dynamics? Your customers.
Yeah.
When you are interacting with your customer, you have less power.
Yeah.
When you're interacting with your vendor, you have more power. Even if you are only one person at your company, you have power dynamics. Maybe you have no employees, right? And so that affects if I had to think about who am I going to be late to, my meeting with my vendor or my customer, the answer is clear, right? Another dimension is what we call give versus get. So the way we like to give respect versus the way we like to get respect can be different. For example, maybe I like to surprise people, but I don't want to be surprised. And then the last dimension, yeah, right? A lot of people are like that. Well, I give good surprises. Other people don't give good surprises. That's why I like to surprise people. And then the last one is what matters to you. What matters to you? That's the practicing inward curiosity. I actually have to be honest with myself. What do I actually care about? And that's really hard because sometimes we don't want to admit it. Sometimes we don't feel safe admitting it. Something I noticed in my research is people who are earlier in their career, they think more about how they want to give respect. And people who are more senior in their career think about how they're going to get respect.
I think this is really amazing. The 7 form of respect really speak volume. Because as an entrepreneur, I was just viewing it from the perspective of how can every entrepreneur apply to it? And it just speak volumes, especially let's say the first one, which is punctuality. If at the end of the day, you're supposed to show up at a particular more like work, you schedule work with a particular client and you didn't show up, you lose the first form of respect, which is punctuality. Once it gets right, they will actually more like head from you. And some of them, they're actually more like turn off owing to the procedure. They will ask more like, what is the procedure of you getting this job done? And if your procedure does not actually speak volumes to what they're looking for, to, you already lose it. And information, all of them, some of them might want some levels of details of what the job entails.
Oh, yes.
And once you're able to give them statistics, a whole lot of bunch of it, and even give them what to study, some of them are at peace with it, while some others, they just want to give you just a bit of it and they're okay.
Mhm,
And when it comes to
mhm.
your candor, when it comes to your disposition, how you actually handle a whole lot of stuff, it speak volume too. And consideration. And depending on how you just go ahead with taking up some particular initiative, whether you consider them or not consider them, it actually speak volumes when it comes to the relationship. Acknowledgement is key and attention. I think every one of them just speak volumes to how it could actually be from the entrepreneur to client basis and from clients from the entrepreneur to the various vendors. And it's really profound now. Thanks for sharing.
It's about noticing. It's about being curious and noticing that there are going to be differences. Not every client is the same.
Yes.
And there's these different dynamics. For example, I can't be mad if my client is late to my meeting, but I better not be late to their meeting.
Yeah. So
Right?
true.
It's just like the expectation.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So as a woman of color in leadership, what
Mm.
challenge have you faced and how did you navigate them?
I think that sometimes people assume what I am going to care about. So, for example, early on in my work, because I am a woman of color working in this organizational development, communications, leadership, people think, oh, you must care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's your work. And I tell people I care about it, and I have colleagues who specialize in it. I don't specialize in it. So I think that even sometimes people just look at me and they assume they know what I'm going to do or what I'm going to care about. And so I have to dispel that. Or they assume certain things about me. And I'm okay with assumptions. I just have to then diplomatically I don't get angry, right? I don't get angry about it. I don't want to put my energy in anger. Instead, I just redirect and sometimes even just learn, oh, what is your experience with this or this? But I actually use the assumption of sometimes maybe not being as well equipped. Well, I use that actually to my advantage because I think it's better to delight and surprise someone than to disappoint them.
Amazing. 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 I think it's the fact that they don't get to know your move and their assumption most times does not actually match. And the fact that, yeah, even as at that, you're still able to kind of put your string and surprise them most time, which is better off compared to they know what is expected and you fall short of it.
Yeah, it can be hard. It's like, oh, you think I'm going to be super amazing, and now I'm like worried about disappointing you, right? So, yeah.
So you describe getting a real life MBA through your experience running
Yeah.
in Vietnam newspaper. What does that teach you about entrepreneurship?
Oh gosh, it taught me a lot about sales. So here's the thing. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to learn how to sell.
Mm.
And actually, I think a lot of people make the mistake going to business school and thinking that's where they're going to learn how to sell. Like selling is the heart of business. And you don't need to go to an MBA program to learn that. You can just do that you don't even have to go to college. And so, but in any case, working at the newspaper, I was selling something that was both tangible and intangible, right? Because the newspaper has a physical form. I'm selling advertising, but the value is intangible. And so I really had to learn how to ask questions to find out what people cared about. And I still remember my first call with a advertising agency. And they asked me all these questions and I didn't know how to answer. And I ended that call saying, I'm really, really bad, but I'm going to get good. Because I needed to. I needed to make money,
Yeah.
right? I just had to. So, and I would say that selling is one big one. Another one is learning to partner so that we can have more resources because we don't have that many resources. And so we learned how to partner with other organizations so that we can put what we have together so we can be stronger together. For example, the newspaper, we partnered with a Spanish-speaking, all the Spanish newspapers, and they have a delivery vans that could take us to much farther places. And we were their first Asian newspaper. And so they were really excited to partner with us.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, we were able to expand our distribution area. And that was a unique partnership. So I always look for unlikely. I mean, I think going back to 2000, the Great Recession made us be creative. And then I'll say another thing is asking for help. I think this is another thing entrepreneurs really need to learn how to do. You cannot let pride get in the way. I think about, again, my Vietnamese community and how small we are. And yet I look at how much we've been able to accomplish in the years that we've been in the US. And it's because we help each other and we ask for help. Like there is no bank loans for businesses. It was very hard to get bank loans. So we had to ask other people, hey, can you lend me money? I need capital. And then even now, when I talk to friends, even just like, let me know if you know anyone who needs services. I have to ask. Because if you do not ask, they say if you don't ask, you won't get, right? Like,
So
and I remember once I talked to a new entrepreneur and she was saying all these things around it. And I said, are you asking me for something? Oh, when you talk about a problem, that's not asking for help.
so true.
You're hoping to someone to offer. That's not asking for help. And I
So
saw my
true.
parents and I saw it's just like, we just have to ask. So learning how to sell, partnering, and asking for help. Those are, I think, the real life MBA. And there were many other things too, but I would say those are the big things.
Wow, amazing. Learning how to sell. And I think this is very integral when it comes to entrepreneurship. And a whole lot of it can be learned just what you say from experience. And even knocking door to door, over time, you figure out what is the right and better way to get it done compared to reading. Yeah, there's a whole lot of principle to learn there, but the experiential value of it, which is more of from the fact that being neglected, being turned down, you can't learn this one from. You have to learn it experientially to know how it feels and what you could do differently to actually more like get a better result.
Oh, I'll say one other thing. But this kind of goes back to selling. Something I learned in my second year is if you're not hearing no enough, you're not asking enough. You have to be hearing no's. You have to. If your close rate is so high, that means that you are too safe.
I think this is more like a big blow to me now. I think I'm definitely going to adopt it because I run more like a painting. I do painting and industrial cleaning alongside. And just hearing this now, this might be, which simply means me not hearing no enough. Simply means I think I'm accepted too many shabby jobs, and also it might be I'm not asking a whole lot of. This is more like a big deal that I need to be reaching out to more and. Yeah, I get it.
And if people are always saying yes to your prices are too low, you probably have to lift your prices a bit.
So true.
Yeah,
thank you so much for that. So your TED Talk and writings often challenge assumption. What's one common assumption about respect that you wish people would drop?
One common assumption about respect. Okay, here's one. So a lot of times when people think about respect, they think about the golden rule. So this is treat people the way you want to be treated. All right. So the problem with the golden rule is what if people don't want to be treated the way you want to be treated?
Yeah.
So I actually have what I call the rubber band rule. So I have a rubber band right here. Do you see it?
Yes.
Look at this rubber band, right? And so with the rubber band rule, what it means is we're all capable of stretching. So respect it's stretchy. Aro, I know you like something and I'm kind of indifferent, but I'll do it for you, right? Because I want to show you respect. And we're constantly stretching for people. And we actually kind of pride ourselves like, I know what people want. I can stretch for them, right? But the problem is sometimes we're doing things we really don't like. And we're finding ourselves stretching so much and we're stretching until we snap and break like a rubber band. So the rubber band rule is knowing what are my breaking points? What's going to make me snap? And that's different for everyone. And that's different at work and at home. And I have to be clear with myself. And that's self-respect, actually. I have to be clear with myself before I can expect other people to respect me. A lot of times people think, oh, why did they do that? Why didn't they? It's just like, but do you know what you want? Do you know how you want people to respect you?
Thanks for that. And I think it's really, really profound because the golden rule speaks volumes to do unto others what you wanted to do to you. And from the standpoint of respect, it just spoke volumes to you might actually want to respect a certain way and you do it to others and discover that to them that was not respect. And you give you something that giving back to you might not be respect. It's just actually more like disvalue what respect simply means. And so you have to actually be curious to know what respect means for them. And
for you.
It should be the same because sometimes just when you make reference of you surprising someone with gift and every other stuff, or giving feedback or actually giving praise and everything. Not everybody in quotes want that, even as much as they can give it. So it's a way of actually more like being curious to know what to respect me for the next persons and what you self perceive as respect, which is totally different from what is golden rule is, which is do unto others what you wanted to actually do to you. Yeah, amazing. So someone who bridge culture and generation, what give you hope about the future of work and inclusion?
I think that's a great question. I think that there is a lot more focus now on belonging and inclusion and understanding how much time we spend at work. And so my hope for the future is we spend a lot of time at work. Let's try to make work a place that people feel good at, and for me, where people can learn. And so what I'm always trying to do with employers is to get them to understand, look, how do you make your organization into a learning organization? And that does not mean you always bring in outside training. It means you encourage people to learn from one another and they feel invested in, because if they feel invested in, they will invest back. They will give back to the organization. If they feel they don't have to be perfect and just only give what they know, but they can actually learn as they are working on the job, they will give more to the organization.
Yeah.
For me and my team, I can't pay that much. What I can promise is you're going to learn a lot when we're doing this together. And that makes us more resilient and prepared for the future too. So guess what gives me hope is that I think that people are seeing, hey, we're spending a lot of time at work. So let's make that time meaningful. And I also see there's this other counter one is like work is work, home is home. I've spent way too much time at work to have a separation.
Yeah.
And maybe for some kinds of work, you can have a clear separation. You know, I'll share one of the things that I've heard and care about a lot is like in the construction industry, there's a very high suicide rate among construction workers. And I think a lot of that is because for safety, or it can be hard to communicate people need help, right? And so much of safety training is based on like this is how you use the ladder. But we don't say, how do I talk about when I don't know how to use the ladder, or I see someone else not using the ladder correctly? And think about if they can learn those communication skills at work, how that applies to home and how that can help them at home. And like when they need help, and imagine then if we could lower the suicide rate that way. So, you know, that's why I'm thinking like work and home, there's an opportunity to learn things at work that help us at home.
Yeah, this is really amazing because at the end of the day, we spend most of our times at work, and even the summation of everything, most of our life at work. So why don't make work look like home so that we could actually learn everything that needs to be learned? And yeah, it will actually be intriguing when every now and then you woke up from home and you are inspired going to work, there's in quotes a whole lot of things you are actually going to learn in work compared to anytime you're thinking about work, get tired owing to a whole lot of stuff that actually waiting. So if there is one mindset you would like my listeners to adopt after this conversation, what would it be?
I would say it's a curious mindset and to practice curiosity. And so what I mean by that, it's not about always being curious. It's about, I think of curiosity as a practice. That's what my TEDx talk is about. And that means actually admitting when I don't want to be curious and taking a pause. So I would say that it's just like to practice to see it as a practice. Because when we see it as a practice, that means we don't take it for granted and we understand how hard it is.
Tell us about yourself, how they can connect with you, and how they can do business with you.
Yes, the best way is actually through LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can find me at Julie Pham, PhD. You can also go to CuriosityBased, that's BASED.com, and find me that way. I also have a YouTube channel on CuriosityBased. Please do reach out. I love connecting and engaging with people.
Amazing. Definitely it's going to be on the show notes and audience can reach out to you. So Julie, thank you for your insights and heart-opening conversation. I love how you have reframed respect as something we define for ourselves, an expression and expressed through the curiosity for everyone listening. Be sure to check out our websites at curiositybased.com. You'll find our book, 7 Form of Respect, our weekly newsletter, and free resources to help you build more connected team. Until next time, keep learning, keep curious, stay curious, and keep building meaningful into your work and life. It's really a pleasure having you on the show, Julie.
Thank you so much for our conversation.
And also, you ever saying something?
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm about to do research on actually respect outside of work. And so for anyone who wants to share their experiences and share their stories with respect outside of work, and that can be in your home life, that can be in your volunteer life, then please reach out to me. And we have these focus groups, you have these one-on-one interviews. You can be part of the next book. So.
Oh, amazing. So for my audience who actually want to kind of share their stories, definitely you're going to see the link of the websites on the show notes. And also you can actually reach out on LinkedIn and share those stories. Yeah, be part of the amazing movement. Yeah, thank you, Julie.
Just make sure you said you heard our conversation on this podcast. That will help me. Thank you.